next turn. Now, if you're not going to read that and you're playing this card, you could make a mistake and it could lead to problems, especially if you resolve the card and later on your opponent notices that A, you can resolve it that turn, and B, they can't verify which cards you drew. So this can be a really big problem right now, just with not reading that card. It could cause a game loss, which could cause a match loss. So the reason you always want to read your own cards first is, number one, you want to understand the effect exactly. You don't want to misread and be like, oh, well, not read and be like, oh, that's not how the card works, or misread the card text and not follow the effect to how it's meant to be done. So whenever you're reading a card, what the text says is exactly how it resolves. That's exactly what the card does. There isn't any hidden text. There isn't anything where it says, oh, this card can't be negated, or you can use this card during a battle phase. If it says once per turn, it's hard once per turn. Well, once per turn or hard once per turn, depending. And there are a lot of different card texts you can read that can dictate how a card can work. So always read your own card text. Always know what your cards do. Now, in a game, you want to also always read your opponent's card. Even if you think you know what your opponent's card does to the exact 10th degree, knowing exactly what their card does, you always want to read. You always want to read what your opponent's cards do. That way there aren't any mistakes. So for example, let's say your opponent is playing Star Cirrus for some reason, and they summon down the Scepter, and they search out Sovereignty. Okay, so for Scepter to work, it's once per turn, so that's basically main phase effect. Now, during your opponent's turn is on summon, but with Sovereignty, to resolve Sovereignty, so you already have a Sovereignty in hand to actually get the special summon effect, and then chain the other Sovereignty that you searched, and then you'll get to draw. But let's say you don't read Scepter and your opponent searches Sovereignty, and it says, okay, now chain Sovereignty from hand, the one that they just searched, but they don't have another Sovereignty in hand, they can't properly resolve that effect. That's why you always want to read it. Just make sure your opponent's accurate, and to make sure you're accurate as well with what's going on in the duel. Also, it can help knowing how to play your cards and what order. It's kind of later on be discussing more in depth chaining, once per turns, and kind of how hand traps work, when to use hand traps, all that stuff later on in this series. But for today, it's mostly about reading. So you always want to read. A lot of people will say, or not say, but will not read a card. I want to read the first portion of a card. You want to read the full effect, just in case there's any effect where in one case it won't work, or it's on summon, all of that. You want to know what a card does exactly. So that's why you always want to read your own cards and your opponent's cards. Also, before you pick up a deck or even buy a deck, you definitely want to know what the cards do, so you know if you can play the deck, what you need for the deck, all that type of stuff. So for example, let's say you want to play Shadows. So you pick up Shadows. But let's say you want to play, let's say you don't read what Dragon does, and you decide, oh, I'm not going to need that card. You guys see a lot of people not playing Dragon, even though a lot of people play Dragon, but this is just an example. And you decide, oh, I'm not going to play Dragon. Well, if you were to read Dragon and realize what your matchups were, then it could be really beneficial to pick it up. So that's why you always want to read cards and read what they do before you ever pick up a card or anything like that. And that's why you always want to read your opponent's cards and your own cards, just so you know exactly what's going on in a duel. And that way you're not making mistakes or not trying to target a card that can't be targeted or stuff like that. Also, you want to just be accurate with what your own cards do and with what your opponent cards do. And that's why it's so important. So when you read these cards or any card, a lot of cards have different effects. For example, let's say your opponent summons down 2 Strausses, now that Strauss is at 2. Let's say they somehow manage to get 2 Strausses down. Strauss isn't hard once per turn, so it means that they can resolve both Strauss. But you could not read it and not know what it does, or you can only know about the search effect and not know about the popping spells and traps and be surprised when they try to pop your spells and traps. So that's really important. And that kind of goes for anything. Also kind of with Plasma. You want to read what Plasma does. Plasma negates monster effects on board. But let's say your opponent doesn't really understand Plasma. It says it negates all monster effects. Any monster effects. Just not the ones on board. If you just take that at face value, you could lose a duel because you have an effect that could get rid of Plasma, engrave, or pop it. And you decide not to use it because you think Plasma negates all monster effects. That's why you always want to read the card, because it only affects cards on field. So there's a lot of really minor text you want to read, and card text can be very important. In future video, I'll be going over like once per turn, hard once per turn, all of that. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. If you like the video, like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions or suggestions for future uploads, leave them in the comments below. And if you want to help out, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.